This is an iHeart podcast.
Lowe's knows Sundays are for football, so tackle your home improvement projects by Saturday and earn your Sunday with great deals on LG and Bosch appliances, select Bounty and Swiffer cleaning products, and more. Then once your to-do list is done, get ready to kick back, relax, and enjoy the game. Shop in-store or online now and earn your Sunday with help from Lowe's, official partner of the NFL.
Wasabi is purpose-built to free your business from skyrocketing storage costs and fees. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. Check out Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals. Wasabi, driving innovation in data storage for up to 80% less than market competition. Try for free at wasabi.com. Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage, proud partner of the iHeart Podcast Network.
This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, and in this episode 1056 of the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, thanks for tuning in. Before I get to the trends this week, I just want to remind you once again to check out the Late Round newsletter. In that newsletter, you get my written content. You get the 15 transactions list to your email inbox every week. You get the data dump. And then at the end of every week, David Kitchen, my COO, sends a recap of everything late round fantasy football did that week. And then during the off season, there's tons of research articles that I send you guys via that newsletter. It takes 2 seconds to sign up. Just head to lateround.com and click newsletter. That's lateround.com. Now let's get to this week's trends. Let's kick off today's episode by looking at Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson. Because let's be honest, this is probably the biggest storyline in fantasy football entering week 12, assuming Stevenson is able to play. No one outside the Patriots knows exactly how they're going to divvy up this backfield. Running back can be frustrating because we can do all of this analysis. We can really like a player, but if a coaching staff wants to do things a certain way, that analysis doesn't matter. I mean, just look at how long it took the Buccaneers to give Sean Tucker more work. What I can tell you is that Travion Henderson has better metrics than Ramondre Stevenson across the board. And in my opinion, he passes the eye test too. But Travion Henderson has a rushing yards over expected per rush this year, according to Next Gen Stats, of plus 0.6. Stevenson is plus 0.2. Henderson has an EPA per rush of plus 0.02. Thanks to fumbles, Stevenson is minus 0.35. Henderson has gained 10 or more yards on 9% of his rush attempts. Stevenson has done it at a 7% rate. And you might sit there and you're thinking, Henderson's just putting up better per rush numbers because of some big plays, some chunk plays. But check out success rate. Success rate is a binary yes or no. It doesn't care how successful that run was, just if it was successful. And on the season, Henderson has a 40% success rate. Stevenson is at 32.5%. Just based on the eye test, the way things are trending, and these numbers, I think we've got a 1A, 1B situation where Henderson is the 1A. And I said this before and I'll say it again. New England has a great running back schedule rest of season. Both running backs can be fine. I'm actually well ahead of the market with Ramondre Stevenson because of that fact. But I do think Henderson deserves that 1A job at this point, just based on the numbers and based on recent trends. Literally last week on this show, I talked about Carolina's drop back over expected rate. And I mentioned how Tetairoa McMillan would be smashing this year if not for such a run-heavy philosophy. According to Fantasy Life's dropbacks over expected formula, the Panthers entering week 11 had just one game this year with a dropbacks over expected rate above 0%. Meaning in just one game, they were more pass heavy than expected. And it happened all the way back in week 2. And from week 4 through week 10, their dropbacks over expected rate was minus 12%. That was by far the lowest in football. In week 11, though, the Panthers had a dropbacks over expected rate of plus 8%. That was by far their highest of the season. And not only did their offense get a score on half of their drives, but Tetairoa McMillan's peripherals finally gave us that ceiling game that we've been hoping for. You always need to give an offense context. But when you see things like target share and how a team is deploying a player, when that offense's context changes, this is a really good example of how it can impact that individual player. Let's just hope that this becomes a legitimate trend. Ricky Pearsall is back for the 49ers in Week 11. Now, we have to take all this with a grain of salt because Pearsall was coming off of an injury. The 49ers probably didn't want him super involved to begin with, let alone in a blowout. But Pearsall ran around on 82% of San Francisco's dropbacks. Not bad at all. But he also only had an 11.5% target share and he scored 1 PPR point. Now, I dug into this with fantasy points data because I was curious if the team was trying to get him the ball or not. Turns out, Pearsall had a 0% first read target share against Arizona. George Kittle and Juwan Jennings were at 31%. Now, I'm not saying this is a sign of things to come. I'm just saying it's probably not a bad idea to check in on this after another game or two to see if Pearsall clearly isn't a top option for them. Or maybe this was them just trying to get him up to speed after missing some time. It's a different team than it was earlier this season when Pearsall was seeing 29% target shares. So this is a story that we have to follow. I feel like people don't realize how good Nico Collins has been. It's definitely been an up and down year for him. But there's probably a little bit of anchoring going on with Nico Collins, assuming he's just not lived up to expectation whatsoever. But he kind of has. Kind of. Since week 1, Collins is averaging 16.6 PPR points per game. He's seen target totals of 10, 11, 15, and 10 over his last 4. Now, like I said with Jaden Higgins on yesterday's 15 Transactions episode, the upcoming schedule for the Texans, it's not anything special. But props to Nico for actually being a decent fantasy asset when everyone seemed to bury him at the start of the season. This next trend, kind of a weird one. Breece Hall played with Braylon Allen from weeks 1 through 4. In those games, he never dipped below a 14% target share, not in a single game. But his running back rush share was 70% per game. From week 5 through now, Hall's running back rush share has jumped from 70% to 86%. No surprise there because Braylon Allen is no longer in the lineup. But his target share has gone from never dipping below that 14% mark and hovering the 18% mark to now rarely getting over the 10% mark. He's seen a target share per game rate of just 8% since Braylon Allen's injury. Now you're probably thinking that Hall is running fewer routes, right? Well, that hasn't been the case. He had a 43% route share during the first 4 weeks. It's 42% since then. One thing that is kind of interesting, though, is the Jets' general intent to get him the ball through the air. He had a 10.9% first read target share over those first 4 games. That's according to fantasy points data. Since then, it's gone from 10.9% to 4.9%. So the Jets just seem less interested in getting Breece Hall the rock through the air. And that's giving him worse fantasy production overall. Maybe that changes, though, with this shift at quarterback. Keon Coleman was a scratch for the Bills on Sunday. Apparently, there was some off-the-field stuff going on. But the Bills also had Josh Palmer back. He hadn't played since week 6. And Buffalo's wide receiver room, it was a mess in week 11 from a fantasy perspective. Khalil Shakir was the only Bills wide receiver with a route share above 50% against the Buccaneers. And he was at 68% according to PFF data. Meanwhile, Tyrell Shavers, Curtis Samuel, Josh Palmer, and Gabe Davis, they each ran either 15 or 16 routes. No more, no less. You just can't trust anyone in that wide receiver room, maybe outside of Khalil Shakir. And it's so crazy that that's the case, given who's throwing them the ball. Cam Scadaboo was hurt in week 8, so we have 3 games without him now. Devin Singletary has 32 rush attempts and 6 targets in those games. Tyrone Tracy has 38 rush attempts and 10 targets in those games. But Devin Singletary has scored 35.1 PPR points. Tyrone Tracy, 32.7. And a key reason for that discrepancy, despite Tracy seeing more work, is how they've deployed these backs in the green zone. Devin Singletary is playing all of their snaps within the opponent's 10-yard line. And during this time frame, he's seen 10 rush attempts from that area of the field. Tyrone Tracy has 0 attempts. If that wasn't the case, we'd feel a lot better about Tyrone Tracy rest of season. Kenneth Walker's been seeing just a little bit more work of late. The Seahawks had a Week 8 bye. Before that bye, Walker was averaging a running back rush share per game rate of about 52%. His target share per game was 5%. Since then, the running back rush share, it hasn't shifted much. Actually, it's dropped by 4 percentage points. It's at 48%. But the target share has gone up to 8%. And the snap share, Walker just being on the field, that's gotten better. It's gone from 44% to 48%. Walker was out-snapped by Zach Charbonnet in 5 of their first 6 games together. But Walker's seen more snaps than Charbs in each of their last 3. Now, I mention all this because Mike McDonald said this week that, quote, I think he, as in Walker, deserves and earning more opportunities to get the ball. And he should. This is like Travion Henderson versus Ramondre Stevenson, at least analytically. Walker has a rushing yards over expected per attempt of plus 0.1. Charbonnet, minus 0.3. Walker has an EPA per rush of minus 0.1. Charbonnet, minus 0.18. Walker has a success rate of 41%. Charbonnet, 36%. So there's been a small uptick, a really small uptick in Walker's usage recently. But there's a chance we see an even bigger one soon. CeeDee Lamb has now been back from his injury for 4 games. In those 4 games, George Pickens has a target share per game rate of 26%. He's averaging 17.6 PPR points per game after his 29-point outing on Monday night. Now, during the same time frame, Lamb has a 27.6% target share per game rate. And because of Pickens' Week 11, Lamb is actually averaging 0.2 points per game less than Pickens during this stretch. Now, this is not a dig at Lamb at all. He's a stud rest of season. It's just to show that George Pickens can definitely still eat while CeeDee Lamb is in that lineup. And it's great to see. I thought Monday night was the best game of George Pickens' career. The last trend this week is about the Los Angeles Rams. They're using heavier personnel than usual. I'm sure you've heard about that all across social media over the last few weeks. They're using more 13 personnel. Some of that definitely can be game script related. But regardless, we've been seeing roughly 10 dropbacks per game from the Rams with these 3 tight end sets. And Puka Nacua's peripherals, they've shifted as a result. For instance, from weeks 1 through 5, Nacua had a route share of 85% and a target share of 35%. Since then, his route share has been 64%, his target share 21%. Devontae Adams hasn't seen that big of a discrepancy. Now, I don't think this is completely personnel driven. We know Nacua was hurt earlier this year, and it was right within that split. So that's undoubtedly going to play a role here. More importantly, the Rams played their first truly competitive game in weeks in Week 11. Before that, they blew out the 49ers, they blew out the Saints, they blew out the Jags, and they beat the Ravens. That was the game that Nacua was hurt in. And what's encouraging is that in their game against Seattle this past Sunday, Nacua did see a 30% target share, his best since Week 4. He also saw a 75% route share. That was his best since Week 5. I don't think that's just a coincidence. Game script can definitely impact this too. But I do think we should all be aware that when you hear about LA's heavier personnel usage, it does hurt a player like Puka Nacua in fantasy. I just think it's very easy to over-exaggerate that impact and put way too much emphasis on just that one single thing. As usual, there's a lot of things at play. That's it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you yet subscribed to the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Late Round QB. Thanks for listening, everyone. I'll be back in your ears tomorrow with the Weekly Sleeper Show.
Get almost anything you need delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a well-groomed lawn delivered, but you can get chicken parmesan delivered. A little escape? No. A delicious bowl of grapes? Yes, that. An afternoon stroll? Sorry, no. A burrito bowl? Happily, yes. A day of sunshine? No. A box of fine wines? Yes. Uber Eats can definitely get you that. Get almost anything delivered with Uber Eats. Order now. Alcohol in select markets. Product availability may vary by region. See app for details.
This is Julian Edelman from Games with Names. As a fellow dude, do you ever get that not so fresh feeling in your butt? That's because you're probably using the dry stuff to wipe. Wet, extra large, flushable dude wipes get what toilet paper leaves behind in your behind. You wouldn't clean the tail end of your truck with dry paper towels, so why would you wipe with dry toilet paper? Wetter just cleans better. There are no more dingleberries, no more itch and irritation, just a deep, down the seam, confident clean. So don't fumble the ball with toilet paper. Stop being an a-hole to your b-hole. Drop the toilet paper. Available on Amazon and major retailers nationwide. Dude Wipes, best clean, pants down.
This is an iHeart podcast.